Hello YouTube, my name is Isabella and today we're going to be discussing all the books I read in February. So in February I actually did pretty good. I read 10 books, which for such a short month I was pleasantly surprised with. I got through my TBR very well. The ratings in here are kind of all across the board. That's fine. And my takeaway from this set of reading is I need to get back into reviewing, like video reviewing. I haven't done it in a while. I miss it and I have a lot of thoughts, and that's what sometimes bogs down wrap up. So I'm hoping I'll make this a bit shorter, and then in the future I'll be back better at actually reviewing. Anyway, that's more for me than anyone else, but whatever. The first thing I completed was Rosewater by Tade Thompson. This is the start of an adult sci-fi trilogy set in the future in which there is this like weird biodome that kind of like pops up in Nigeria, and then like a town actually surrounds it, which is the town of Rosewater. You follow a main character who works for the government who is able to navigate this weird biodome, xenosphere, whatever, and he's a kind of a government agent, kind of not, and you kind of spend the time unraveling the mystery of the town of Rosewater, this biodome, and what's happening in like the somewhat near to far future. So Rosewater was definitely a test for me, or kind of reaching out of my comfort zone in terms of sci-fi, because there are a lot of cool concepts in here, but as many cool concepts as there are, I do think a lot of them fly over my head. Whenever Thompson was describing the xenosphere, I was incredibly lost. It's so like things are kind of happening in like an entirely different plane, and it's just really hard for me to wrap my head around. I also didn't love the main character, but I don't think that's a surprise. I don't like the jaded government agent who does things on his own terms, is amoral, blasé attitude, kind of sexist, and with him I found he also has little agency. Things just keep happening and he just kind of goes throughout the motions, which I think is a very frustrating combination. That this is not a character archetype I like, but if you do like that, or kind of like the detective cop, that blasé attitude, I think you could really enjoy this story. I thought the plot was cool. I think Thompson actually is really successful with the way he executes this. This is told in multiple perspectives or multiple timelines, and everything is really shrouded in mystery, and the way the timelines bounce back and forth, I think that's actually done very well, which is shocking to me, especially because this is told in third person present, and I really don't like that tense. I don't, but I got used to it and think it was done actually very well. I was interested in the overall mystery. That was the driving factor and what kept me reading it. I did not particularly love the depiction of female characters, and like the romance or whatever it is in here is just not good. I gave this 3.5 out of 5 stars. Cool concepts, really like the setting and atmosphere, like the writing. I don't think I'm continuing on with this series though. Not 100% sure. Maybe if I find like the second book used, I'd try. Then went and completed Empire of Wild by, I think it's actually Cherie Demoline, if I remember the pronunciation of the audiobook correctly, and if it is, I'm sorry. I've been saying her name wrong for a while. This is a standalone adult story that follows a woman whose husband like just basically up and left one day, and she has been struggling trying to find him. It's been like 8 months, 10 months later, and everyone else has given up on him but her. And then this like weird Christian group comes to town, and her husband is the preacher, but this preacher does not seem to remember her at all. It's also a contemporary reimagining of the myth of the Rougarou. I thought this was fine. This is a very straightforward story, good for like a one and done, easy sort of read. I didn't feel particularly super compelled by it, which is unfortunate. It's not bad at all. I really like how Demoline mixes modern day technologies with like ancient indigenous myths and beliefs. I thought that was really cool, and like the myth of the Rougarou itself was very interesting, and I actually liked like the bad guy. He was intimidating and scary. Some people thought he was wooden, but I thought he fit the story well. I think this is paced well. I think the story length is perfect. This is just 300 pages and it did not need any more, any less. Perfectly done, which I very much appreciate. The plot itself, though, I wasn't particularly taken with. I think our main character was great. The surrounding characters were a little flat, but this was fine. I gave it 3 stars. I wanted to like it more. That's okay. It was decent. I then completed Where the Drowned Girls Go by Sean McGuire, book 7 in the Wayward Children series. Half of the time I was reading it, the first half, I was nervous. Like, I was just kind of wondering what the point of this one was. We do have a location change, but it's not one of the portal fantasies, and I was a bit lost with like the monotony of things that were happening because, again, these are so short. I was wondering like where like plot and stuff and the events would kick in. By the end, though, Sean McGuire did win me over. I just realized I forgot to mention, as always, content warnings will be listed in the description. Popped into my head because the depiction of our main character, who is fat, and all the fat phobia she faces kind of wore on me a little bit. This is a very personal thing, and I don't think that Cora's fatness was navigated poorly, and Sean McGuire does a good job, in my opinion, kind of pushing back at like all the things these characters are saying and doing to the main character. It just wore at me because there was a lot of it in such a short span of time, and it was a little annoying, upsetting, whatever. But that's definitely a personal thing for me. I like that this ties in to some books from the past and is also setting up for, I think, big future events. I think this is kind of like turning the tide for maybe like the final events-ish of this series and building up, I think, over the course of the next few books. I'm excited for the course of the story overall. I like Cora a lot. I wonder if she'll get more, and I'm pretty excited for the next installment. I gave this 4 stars, which I'm impressed by because, again, at the beginning I was a bit struggling with it. The next book I finished was Between the World and Me by Ta-Nehisi Coates. This is nonfiction. It's a very short account of just a father writing to his teenage son about all the things that he thinks his son should know about being Black, and specifically being Black in America and having a Black body. I don't have a ton of thoughts on this that haven't already been like reviewed and stuff because this is a very personal account. I think Ta-Nehisi Coates is a really good writer, and the way he describes things are pretty excellent. It's very poignant and very striking with the way he chooses to write, and like he does not sugarcoat anything. Even though this is to his teenage son, he definitely puts all the problems like right in your face, which is a good thing, although not necessarily pleasant or easy to read. There is a lot of emphasis on here on how you have to navigate the world as like a Black man so very differently, and how that like really will shape you as a person. Very poignant, very good, pretty difficult to listen to, although very like short. It's a very short audiobook, but I really liked it. It was good. This next book was simultaneously a surprise and then also not surprising in the slightest, and that's Caraval by Stephanie Garber. I've put this off for years. I have not wanted to read it. Frankly, if I didn't spin the prompt I got, I probably never would have picked this up because I just didn't want to read it. And pretty much I was right. I thought this was going to be a 1-star read, like that there's nothing good about it, that I don't understand why people like it, all that kind of stuff. Like, I thought I would actively hate this story, and I didn't like it, but I didn't hate it. This is the start of a young adult trilogy focusing on 2 sisters who are kind of desperate to escape their situation. Their father is rather abusive, and one sister has been writing to the Grand Master of like the Caraval circus performance, trying to get tickets, and then they are sent tickets, But then the whole thing surrounding this magical circus when they get there is the one sister has to locate the other, and that's like the game. I did not like the writing style. I didn't think I was going to, and I did not like it. The author chooses to describe emotions with colors, but with very little else. She'll just be like, with citrine, envy, beige, disappointment. It's so odd, and like I don't think she leans fully enough in to make this almost like a magical realism or part of this character. It kind of comes in and out, and there's not enough other description to make it at all seem normal or like a good writing choice. It's so weird, because I also have read The Astonishing Color After by Emily X. Arpan, but that's like a surrealist contemporary story where the main character is an artist, and so she sees things with colors and her emotions are described often with colors, but that's way more fitting. And this one, it just rings hollow, and I don't know, it's a specific writing choice that just did not work for me. It's not good. I was surprised by certain events of the plots. The twists and turns were surprising. I did not like the main character, didn't particularly care for the romance, which is I think a large majority of the story, and I could not stand the sister relationship in here. Both of the sisters suck. You cannot convince me otherwise, and you cannot possibly convince me that these sisters actually love each other. We're supposed to believe that. That's what this plot hinges on, but once the main character's sister goes missing, she couldn't give a shit over the fact that her sister was missing, and then it would pop up, okay, but I love my sister, we have to find her, and then she would immediately forget it. It was so ridiculous, and in no way, in my opinion, does this need to have a trilogy's worth of events. Anyway, I gave this 2 stars. It wasn't as bad as I thought, but it also wasn't good. Oh right, yes, I almost forgot I finished this. But I then completed An Unkindness of Ghosts by Rivers Solomon, a book I've been intending to read for years, and I'm glad I finally have done so. This is a standalone sci-fi novel that is set in the far future, I think like 300 years from now, on this massive ship that is on a very like important voyage, but then is also modeled after the antebellum South. So the lower you get in like the ship's levels, there's like a major caste system, and then of course if you're at the bottom, you are treated the absolute worst by society as a whole. There was a lot that was very good about this story, a lot that was very interesting and intriguing. Just dropped my phone. Very disturbing, dark, but also incredibly smart, which is what I have come to expect from Rivers Solomon's stories. I have loved everything I've read by them. Come on, I just dropped my phone again. Really liked their exploration into society, both past and present, of ours through the lens of sci-fi and like the future. Really enjoyed that. Although it was like a hard thing to look at, there is a lot in here. I would definitely recommend checking out the content warnings of this story. It's very brutal and dark. I think I would have appreciated a little bit more description into the scope of the ship overall. I would have liked to know more like what's the population like, how truly huge this thing was, but maybe that's just me and not being able to picture things. I did enjoy our main character a lot. The way she like chose to navigate the world and her position was very interesting, compelling, and very easy to keep reading. I am like kind of mixed on the ending. I understand it, and mostly I understand why Rivers Solomon did the ending this way, but I do not recommend this if you don't like having a lot of questions that aren't probably going to be answered. I think that's the best way I can describe it without fully spoiling anything. Anyway, I did like this. I gave it 4 stars. It just occurred to me how many audiobooks I finished this month. I think I did 4 and then only read 6 books. Huh. Yeah, my physical reading has not been super strong this year as of yet. Anyway, I then went and finished Before They're Hanged by Joe Abercrombie. Listened to this on audio because I didn't realize how well and highly recommended the audiobooks are for this series, and boy are they great. I also just noticed that, like, I picked this book up used, and there's like literal pen someone wrote on the cover. It's upsetting. Anyway, this is the sequel to The Blade itself, of the First Law trilogy, a series I've actually been really enjoying. I really enjoyed this volume, which is strange to say because not a lot happens. This feels almost deliberately meandering at certain points. It's very character focused and like commentary focused on this world. It's not incredibly eventful, even though like war and battles and stuff happen. It's a very interesting balance that Joe Abercrombie strikes, and I really enjoyed it. I love his writing. I love his dry sense of humor. I shouldn't be laughing whilst reading these books, but certain things he describes and just the way he chooses to write is funny. I like that certain questions are answered, but I'm left with a lot more. I really like the characters and their arcs, whether they are like positive or negative arcs. I do think the ending of the series really matters for this one because there are just so many unanswered questions. So I have high hopes for the finale, but I did give this 4.5 out of 5 stars. I really did enjoy it. And now we have my first 5-star of 2022, and I'm very excited about that. And that's The Winter of the Witch by Catherine Arden. This is the third and final book in the Nightingale? Winter Night. There we go. Ha! Winter Night trilogy. It was just great. This is, I think, more of the stuff from like the previous volumes with the stakes consistently being upped. I really like Vasia's character arc as like an entire over the course of the trilogy. I really like that. It's very satisfying, and overall as a finale I think this is incredibly satisfying. There are stakes and consequences and lost experience, but it's overall like a joyful tale, or like a tale of resilience and overcoming great obstacles. I really like the way Vasia chooses to navigate throughout the trilogy. Really like her. I also like the way Catherine Arden explores the romance in here. I think she does a very good job navigating what could be really icky circumstances between, like, you know, a death god and a very young human woman. I think that's done very well. I do like the romance and I am sold on it. As always, I've really enjoyed the writing and the atmosphere, and specifically with this one I really like how the plot of both the magical happenings and the political happenings really tie well together, and I think that was just a great way to end off the series. I gave this 5 glowing stars, really enjoyed it, and overall this is a trilogy I have thoroughly enjoyed. I wasn't planning on reading this, but one of my library's apps that you can access for audiobooks is really odd, where you can't put holds on them, but you can suggest like a title, and then when it's shared across multiple libraries, and when that's available it will pop up to you, so you don't know when you're going to get it. So it's just kind of like a surprise every time, which normally stresses me out, but this one came in and I wasn't reading anything, so I decided, you know what, let's do it. And that's Sisters in Hate by Seabird Darby. This is nonfiction. It's incredibly difficult nonfiction to get through. It follows 3 different women in their journeys into white supremacy and their eventual rise in it, and then one person actually leaves white supremacist movements overall. But this is an incredibly difficult book to read, to listen to. I wanted to pull my hair out and scream sometimes with like the absolute twisted and disgusting and horrific things that these white supremacists said and believed. It just literally was sickening and made me like sick to my stomach, and so frustrated with like their rhetoric and dogma and how so fucking twisted everything is. It was so difficult to read. I do think this is well researched, well argued, and well described. Darby does a good job like kind of letting them dig their own grave. There is so much that could be unpacked in here, with like the weaponizing of white women's tears and how they choose to gain notoriety in white supremacist circles, and like the further awful you are, how that can like further your agenda and notoriety, and even just also then just like describing the misogyny they faced and how they twist it for it being like a good thing. It's so wild. I think this was really great, difficult to read, and a very unapologetic look at how someone can be radicalized. Moving on to slightly happier topics. I still am not great at reviewing nonfiction, but anyway, the final thing I read, I desperately finished and just finished yesterday, just under the wire, and that's Thunderhead by Neil Shusterman. This is the sequel to Scythe, a series everyone has read and everyone loves, and I thought this was fine. I think I am consistent in the way I've rated Scythe and Thunderhead. I think these are both 3.5 out of 5 stars, although I did just finish it, so things can change a little bit in my brain. There are just some choices in here that are so odd, specifically the removal of one of the main perspective characters for most of it, and for what reason. I just didn't understand at all why they are removed. I thought the middle of this was very boring and monotonous. I did enjoy the political stuff, mostly the maneuvering and whatnot. There's very shocking twists in here. I really liked the expansion into the world, and specifically the AI entity that like rules or helps run the earth. That was very much appreciated. A lot of food for thought. That was, I think, my favorite aspect of the story. I don't like the villains though in the series at all. I think they need better motivations other than we like doing what we're doing, so we're just going to be evil. The villains are very weak overall, I think, in this series. This does read incredibly quickly, and I did like the other main character's journey, that is the main character that is present a lot. The way they are focused on and the way they kind of come to their role, I think was really good and a fun and interesting, compelling journey to follow. 3.5 stars. I hope I did this quickly. I doubt I did it, but I felt like I went a little bit faster than normal. Let me know down in the comments any thoughts on any of the books I've read. Stay tuned for what I read in March, because it's going to be interesting. Down to the wire. We'll see if I actually can complete my March TBR. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you again very soon. Bye!